Welcome back to the Reading and Writing Podcast. My guest today is Timothy Miller, author of the new novel, The Strange Case of the Dutch Painter. Timothy, welcome to the podcast. Well, if someone hasn't yet heard about your new novel, The Strange Case of the Dutch Painter, how would you describe the novel?
Well, it's a historical mystery. It's a Sherlock Holmes tale, my second Sherlock Holmes tale. And basically, when you boil it all down to it, it's Sherlock Holmes investigates the murder of Vincent van Gogh. And because the question is, why would anyone murder Vincent van Gogh? It also becomes a sort of an art heist tale, which I love art heist tales. This was very serendipitous for me. And we basically follow Sherlock Holmes through the history of Vincent van Gogh, because the whole question of whether he was murdered and whether he has anything to do with this art forgery ring is whether he was sane or not, which was my question at the very beginning of the idea. And so we followed him through from Auvers through Paris and down to Arles and over to Montpellier and up to Saint-Rémy and back to Paris. And we find out a little bit about the history of Vincent van Gogh, and from a different point of view from the normal histories.
And I'm curious, do you remember the original idea or impetus that led you to write The Strange Case of the Dutch Painter?
Oh, I do. Although it was about 40 years ago, maybe. I was in a card shop, and there was a card that had a self-portrait of Van Gogh. And I was looking at it, and but at that time, I knew about as much about Van Gogh as anybody else does, that he was a gifted painter, but insane, and had chopped his ear off, and had later on committed suicide. And I looked at that self-portrait, and I thought, and when he chopped his ear off, he had, of course, given it to his lady love, supposedly, who was a prostitute in Arles at the time. And I thought, well, now, if he was going to give something to his lady love, why would it be an ear and not an eye? That would be the real sacrifice for a painter, wouldn't it? And that was when I began exploring the history of Van Gogh, and several questions came about, such as, did he actually cut his ear off? Did he actually commit suicide? Was he actually mad? And finally, I put the whole question into the hands of Sherlock Holmes, because he's far better at figuring these things out than I am.
And so I'm curious, when did you first read the Arthur Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes stories?
To tell you the truth, I was never interested as a child in mysteries, except maybe the Nancy Drew mysteries. And so I was never interested in Sherlock Holmes. And then I was living in Houston, and my roommate at the time had the complete works of Sherlock Holmes. And it was a rainy, disgusting weekend in Houston, and I decided, well, what the hell? I'll give it a try. And by the end of the weekend, I had read the entire Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, and was a fan from then on.
That's a great memory.
Yes.
Why do you think Sherlock Holmes is still such a popular character in books and on the screen?
I think it's because of the mystery of Sherlock Holmes. I think it's because we don't know about him. We can't figure him out. And I think that Doyle did that intentionally. I think that's why Watson exists, is to shield Holmes from our knowledge. And I think the worst Holmes stories are the ones that are actually narrated by Holmes, because then we get a little view into his mind, and it's not all that interesting. But as long as he remains a mystery to us, and I mean, Lord knows I've tried to figure him out, but I think that's what we keep doing, is we keep trying to figure out how Sherlock Holmes works, and not simply how he works as a detective, but how he works as a human being. I mean, what is his history? We know so little about him, and so little about his brother, but we must have figured out that he must have had a very strange upbringing, whatever it was. And I've tried to explore some of that in my books.
That's interesting. I'm curious, do you have a favorite Sherlock Holmes story yourself?
Yes, I do, and it's a rather obvious one. It's Silver Blaze, which is the one about the strange happening of the dog in the night. Because I love the idea of a negative clue. You know, it's not simply what's there, but what's not there.
Right. And I'm curious, do you have a favorite Sherlock Holmes pastiche novel or short story?
Yes, I don't read very many Sherlock Holmes pastiches
Sure.
because I'm afraid of letting them influence me.
Right.
My original influence was The 7% Solution by Nicholas Meyer. And he really opened up the doors for me, and gave me, with the inclusion of Sigmund Freud, gave me to understand that there were some other people who were like Sherlock Holmes, but not exactly like him. And that's what I actually have in this book, is the Yvonne Lermoleaf character, whose name is not actually Yvonne Lermoleaf, is a Sherlock Holmes type, in that he investigates art forgeries, and art authentication. And he was a real person, and a disciple of Morelli, who was the first scientific art connoisseur.
Gotcha. I'm curious, what was your own writing journey that led you to writing and getting your first novel published?
Well, started when I was 6 years old and I had just learned to print. I thought the printing was such a wonderful gift that I immediately tried to write a book about my monsters. And I got about 12 pages in, and finally decided that I couldn't get any further with it. But I've always written since. Possibly I was too good a writer in that I did not know how to rewrite, and rewriting is the key to writing. So I had to learn slowly how to rewrite, first from poetry, then stories, then screenplays, and finally novels. And it took an awfully long time. If you were to look at my first drafts of novels, they're completely, there's such a mess that you cannot understand them at all. And it's really not until about the third or fourth draft that you can understand anything.
So what was your writing process when you were working on The Strange Case of the Dutch Painter? Are you someone who outlines the novel extensively before you begin, or do you just dive into the narrative with a idea of what you want to write?
It's different with every book. With this one, you have to understand that although it's my second Sherlock Holmes book, it's actually my first Sherlock Holmes project because it was my first screenplay written many years ago when I could actually do nothing with it once it was written because Sherlock Holmes was still under lock and key. Uh, and So when I decided to, I originally wanted to write it as a novel, but couldn't figure out who the narrator was. And that was the key, was learning, first of all, that there always needs to be a narrator in a Sherlock Holmes story, whether it's Watson or another person. And so once I did that, once I figured out who the narrator was, then everything sort of fall into place. Uh, and I could realize that I could look at Sherlock Holmes from an entirely new perspective because his Watson character, his narrator, was entirely new to Sherlock Holmes.
Sure. I'm curious, what writing advice would you offer for those who are working on their own stories and novels?
I think what you have to realize when you're writing and you're alone there at your desk and completely fed up is that the way I look at it is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, your writing is complete garbage. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, it's absolute genius. So you don't want to get yourself too low or too high at any time. But you want to just keep writing. And if you keep writing, you'll get better. It's like any other muscle, any other skill. Writing is like playing a guitar or learning to ride a bike. It's all muscle memory, and so just keep at it.
That's great advice. Well, are you working on a new novel now?
Um, Unfortunately, I'm working on 2 novels right now, and I did not intend for that to happen. I have been working on what was going to be my last Sherlock Holmes novel, uh, taking place near the end of Sherlock Holmes' life, and it was going to be about King Tut and the discovery of King Tut and King Tut's curse.
Mm-hmm.
And I got through about the second draft of that and just realized that I still had a huge amount of research to do. And I'm still doing the research. And I was slogging through it. And then somebody happened to mention to me, so somebody is always saying, well, what if you had Sherlock Holmes doing this, Sherlock Holmes meets Godzilla or Sherlock Holmes meets Zorro, whatever. And unfortunately, somebody said, what if Sherlock Holmes met Ebenezer Scrooge? And I laughed it off. And then I thought, that's a possibility because I absolutely adore Dickens.
Sure.
And I've always wanted to write a Christmas ghost story. And I thought, well, then in this case, I could take Sherlock Holmes at the very beginning of his career when he was an actor before Watson. And so now I'm torn between two stories at opposite ends of his life, and I'll probably wind up writing both of them, but I don't know yet which I'm sure my editor would love for me to decide, and would love for me to do the King Tut one because that's the one I promised him, but now I'm not so sure.
That's great. Well, you have to keep us updated on both of those.
Yeah, I certainly will.
Great. Well, what novels have you read recently that you enjoyed?
Well, I just read The Night Circus, which is absolutely fantastic. Actually, I listened to The Night Circus, and it was the first novel that I've actually listened to, and it was the perfect introduction to listening to novels. I've been reading these series of books that take place in the 20s in very sophisticated manor houses. It's by Karen Manuhin. It's the Heathcliff Linux stories. And they're partly funny and partly serious. So it reminds me a little bit of Lord Peter Wimsey, but lighter.
That's great. Hey, this is Jeff from the Reading and Writing Podcast. Do you know what I love when I'm reading a great new book? A cup of tea. It's such a fun ritual. Settling down with a cup of tea and a new novel that I'm excited to read. Why not treat yourself to a cup of Plum Deluxe teas? Every loose leaf tea is hand blended, fresh, using only the best ingredients. From bold black teas to relaxing herbal blends, incredible dessert teas, or fun floral flavors, there's a delicious tea waiting for you. And I'm not making this up. They have a flavor of tea called Reading Nook Blend Black Tea. It's a tea that pairs perfectly with reading, writing, and relaxing. Plum Deluxe is a family-owned business, and they have one of the best selections of delicious, flavorful herbal teas as well as bold black tea flavors. Visit plumdeluxe.com/listen and use the promo code RWP to save 12% on your first order. Tea also makes a great gift. That's plumdeluxe.com/listen and use the promo code RWP. There's nothing better than enjoying a great cup of tea with a good book. And now you can get your great tea from plumdeluxe.com.
Get Macys' lowest prices of the season and save big on summer style essentials, like 50 to 60% off all designer suits for an effortless touch of cool, 40 to 75% off fine jewelry to complete any look, and get ready to jet set with Tag Ridgefield luggage sets just $74.99. Plus, Macys Star Rewards members earn on every purchase except gift cards, services, and fees. Sign up for free at Macys.com/Star Rewards. Savings off sale and clearance prices, exclusions apply.
Well, where can people find you online if they want to learn more about you and your novels?
Well, I'm at thestrangeCasesofSherlock.com, and I'm working on something on Pinterest for the paintings mentioned in the novel. I want to have a place where people can go and actually look at the paintings. So I'm hoping to get that up within the next week or two. And that will be The Strange Case of the Dutch Painter.
That's great. Well, again, we've been speaking with Timothy Miller, author of the new novel, The Strange Case of the Dutch Painter. As we've discussed, the novel is on sale now, so go buy a copy. And Timothy, thanks for doing this interview.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks a lot.
Verney hauled me back into the shadow of the second doorway. Just as Theo Van Gogh emerged from his brother's room and went downstairs. Verney darted into the room behind him. I was shocked by his effrontery, but I could see nothing for it but to follow. In for a penny, as the English say. Even with the door open, the attic room was suffocatingly hot, reeking of sweat and carbolic acid mixed with cheap tobacco and linseed oil. It was bare as a monk's cell. The smoky light of an oil lamp revealed Van Gogh's elder brother, huddled in fitful slumber on a mean iron cot shoved against the wall. There was a rush-sheeted chair playing the part of a nightstand, with a lit pipe sitting on it, the smoke curling up toward the canted ceiling. On the opposite wall stood a washstand with an empty bowl. That was furniture in its entirety. But the room was anything but empty. Canvases were stacked against every wall 4 deep, claiming almost every inch of floor space. Canvases were hung haphazardly above them. The town of Auvers and its environs, painted from every conceivable perspective, every winding street, every red-tiled villa, every hillside vineyard dismantled and transported hither. If he'd only lived in the little town 2 months, the man must have rattled off a painting a day. In the smoky light, the garishly colored paintings throbbed with life, threatening to erupt from the walls. I could hardly take my eyes off them. Vincent's easel stood in a corner, a painting still strapped to it. It looked to be a field of golden corn beneath a lowering sky, with a rain of black dashes slapped across it. Birds of ill omen, perhaps? What kind of mind conceived such waking nightmares? Vernet appeared oblivious to the paintings. He moved to the invalid's side. Vincent van Gogh was a grim sight. He had been lying in the same clothes, among the soiled, blood-stained bed linen for 2 days. Someone had attempted to wash him as he lay there, to little effect. His red hair and beard were matted. His flesh was gray. I couldn't help noticing that his left ear was mangled. It looked as if the lower half had been sliced right off. This is what the confraternity of painters had devolved into, I thought to myself. The masters of the Renaissance had all been apprenticed in their youth to master craftsmen. Michelangelo to Ghirlandaio, Da Vinci to Verrocchio. Every Giotto had his Cimabue. But these new painters, even the ones who started out in the studios, submitted to no masters. Each seemed to wander alone in his own fever dream, isolated from those who came before and those who came after. It was the perfect formula for madness. Vernet slipped a hand under the dressing, probing the wound. His own face seemed to take on a tinge of gray. Too late, he muttered, more to himself than to me. Why did they wait? The painter groaned, arching his spine beneath Vernet's hand. His lips worked, repeating the last words he had said to his brother. Ask Gachet. Ask him what, Vincent? Vernet asked, soft but urgent. Ask Gachet what? Vincent stirred again, but made no answer. Vernet hovered over him, his ear almost against Vincent's lips, willing him to speak. About Olympia. Who is Olympia? We waited to the breaking point of our nerves. but no further answer came. Those were the last words we heard from Vincent. Perhaps the last he spoke in his life. Vernet brushed his lips against the dying man's forehead, a gesture both tender and unexpected. He's burning up with fever. There were footsteps on the stair. We fled again toward the second bedroom, but the door handle started to turn before our eyes. Vernet hustled me back into the shadows at the end of the hall, putting a finger to his lips. As the Revue Girl arrived on the landing, Tommy Hershig popped out of the second bedroom, scaring her. "Oh, Monsieur Hershig, I didn't know you were back." So Hershig was the occupant of the second bedroom, it seemed. She carried a stack of towels under one arm and a pitcher of water in her hand. For his part, Hershig, now decked out in a clean, if ill-fitting suit, his hair was damp from a quick wash. "How's the old fellow, then?" He nodded toward Vincent's door. For answer, she only shook her head, her eyes on the floor. "Don't worry, Goldilocks. I think the old bear is only shamming. I could hear him clomping about in there just now, talking to himself the way he does." She looked at him strangely, biting her lower lip. She dipped her head and went into Vincent's room. Once she was inside, we followed Hershig down the stair. He was too preoccupied with combing his hair to notice we were behind him. Nor did anyone pay attention as we rejoined the company. Any noise we made was swallowed up in the buzz of conversation and the clinking of cutlery. The room was beginning to fill up. We took an empty table. Madame Revue cast an inquiring look our way. I nodded eagerly. Auvers is still a country town as far as mealtimes go. The Revues had their hands full dishing out dinner to their boarders. There was a crowd of Americans at one table, always the loudest voices in any room, and a mix of cosmopolitan and Picardy accents emanating from the other tables. Hershig joined Gachet at the table next to us. They nodded briefly to one another, exchanging desultory greetings, but Gachet was already deep in conversation with a bottle of wine, while young Hershig's eyes tended to follow Madame Revue as she glided around the room, serving her guest. "Tommy, have you seen Monsieur Valdeville tonight? Will he be dining with us?" the lady called across the room to him. "Not he. He's afraid Vincent might take it into his head to shoot someone else." "I beg your pardon, Monsieur Theo." Hershig's cheeks reddened as he realized Van Gogh was present. Theo Van Gogh stood at the counter, brow knitted, working through a stack of telegraph forms. There were bread and wine before him, and a bowl of broth going cold, all untouched. He did not appear to have heard Hershig's remarks. Indeed, he appeared unaware of any activity around him. His face was waxen, and his hands trembled. I realized then that he was more than simply affected. He was positively ill. "Monsieur Hershig brings up an interesting point. Where is the gun Vincent Van Gogh used to shoot himself?" asked Vernet, turning to Gachet. "I don't know." Gachet, a ruse stored into the deeps of his wineglass. "Do the gendarmes have it?" "They weren't able to find it." Vernet threw up his hands and turned away. "Don't be alarmed, monsieur," the doctor jeered. "He doesn't have the gun now. He didn't shoot himself in bed." Vernet turned back with a sudden gleam in his eye. "Where did he shoot himself?" Gachet waved vaguely. Out beyond the cemetery and the fields. They found his easel and paints up there. He took his easel with him when he went to kill himself? I didn't say that. Perhaps he went out to paint, but fell into a spasm of despair, and he decided to take his life. With cases like his, the black mood may hit like a stroke of lightning. You merely reversed the conundrum. Why should he take a gun with him to paint? Hershig broke in with his mouth full. Scarecrows. Vincent turned to him with a look of amused astonishment. Monsieur, please elaborate. Vincent had been working on some paintings of wheat fields. Not much of a subject as far as I'm concerned. A lot of straight yellow lines, but he wasn't one to listen to advice. And he loved yellow. My God, he'd go through 6 tubes a day. Yes. And the gun? Well, he didn't want to paint crows. But where you've got wheat, you get crows. And he couldn't bring himself to ignore them. So he borrowed a gun from someone and shot it off to scare them away. What kind of gun was it? Never saw it. Heard it, though. So did the crows. He mimed aiming a rifle at the sky and squeezing the trigger. Boom! Gachet snorted and risen. It was a revolver, one of those American guns. A Colt, I think they call it. Vernet whipsawed back again. Doctor, he did show the weapon to you? Where? I believe we were in my study. Vincent was fussing over a painting I'd acquired that hadn't yet been framed. He claimed the paint was cracking. One of his paintings? No, a friend of his. Guillaume, I think it was. Perhaps you know the fellow? Well, someday you will. All the world will know his name. I'm something of a collector. It takes a discriminating eye. But it also takes time and care. Sometimes I don't have the time. I have a busy practice in the city, introducing some exciting new procedures. The mind is fascinating, I'm sure it is. And the gun? Oh, well, Vincent blew everything out of proportion. First he was shouting, then he was screaming. He pulled the gun from his pocket and waved it around like a man possessed. What did you do? I stared at him. Very firmly, you know. Gachet assumed what he must have thought was a fearsome expression, though it nearly made me laugh out loud. He looked as if he had the toothache. And that was all. He lowered his head and skulked off. Truly, you must have been a matador in your another life, Doctor. You made no attempt to disarm him? Were you aware of his history of violence toward himself? That violence you speak of, it's not Vincent. It's an aberration. I thought that could always be said of madness, I said. I hadn't meant to speak out, but really it needed to be said. I don't know what can always be said of madness, Gachet snapped back. Are you an alienist? Vernet pursued doggedly. No one asked what he did with the gun? Everyone asked. The police questioned him till they were blue in the face. Ask him yourself. Monsieur Theo, did he tell you anything about it? Van Gogh stared up with blind eyes. He collected his thoughts like shells upon a distant shore. He noticed the crowd, the evening light turning saffron. He caught sight of the landlord, a familiar landmark. Monsieur Revue, if you could see to it that these are sent as soon as possible. He pushed the forms across the counter to him. I should rejoin my brother. Renee stood and crossed to the bar. I can take these for you, monsieur. I need to send a wire myself.
Get Macys' lowest prices of the season and save big on summer style essentials, like 50 to 60% off all designer suits for an effortless touch of cool, 40 to 75% off fine jewelry to complete any look, and get ready to jet set with Tag Ridgefield luggage sets just $74.99. Plus, Macys Star Rewards members earn on every purchase except gift cards, services, and fees. Sign up for free at Macys.com/Star Rewards. Savings off sale and clearance prices. Exclusions apply.
Dunkin' Refreshers are the perfect way to get a little more out of your day. With more tropical flavors like new mango pineapple and more ways to get glowing. Available with green tea, coconut milk, or lemonade. You've got what you need to make the most out of every moment, even the ones spent stuck in traffic. What a beautiful day. Sip into all your favorite Dunkin' Refreshers like new mango pineapple. America runs on Dunkin'. Price and participation may vary. Limited time offer. Additional charges may apply.